Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy Reggie here, back with you for another video. And today I want to have a discussion about what makes a good fight scene. Now to me, there's nothing like a good fight scene when it comes to animation. I love a good fight scene. The twists, the turns, the punches, the kicks, the way that animation makes a fight scene look, it's truly phenomenal. Because when a fight scene is done right, it's more than just two people beating the crap out of each other. It's a battle of ideals, morals, philosophies, goals. When a fight scene is animated correctly, every punch and every kick has emotion behind it. It's like they're speaking through their fists. You can really feel the emotions within the action. And that's the purpose of this video today. I want to have a discussion about what makes a good fight scene, what makes it truly phenomenal and a spectacular viewing experience for the audience. So I think we should start off by identifying a few things to begin with. So the first thing would be, what's the difference between a fight scene and an act? Is typically used to show off how strong someone is or show off their abilities. It's meant to be fast-paced, exciting. The goal of this is to be able to wow the audience and show them how strong or capable a person is. While a fight scene is generally between two established characters with their own goals and motivations and consequences if they lose. A fight scene is a dialogue between two characters. It's a debate, a back and forth, an argument between who's right and who's wrong. So now that we understand the difference between an action scene and a fight scene, let's talk about what makes a good fight scene and a boring fight scene. Now, a boring fight scene are when two characters are just ramming into each other. Neither tries to change their tactics or change their approach. It's pretty much just who punches harder. That doesn't make a good fight scene. That's a boring fight scene. Think of a fight scene kind of like a debate. So a good debate will start off with an introduction. These are when the two characters first exchange blows. It's usually nice and quick, nothing too hard or nothing too flashy, because it's just us meeting for the first time. Then you have your statement, your identifier. What sets your argument apart from your opposing person's argument? This is your identifier. What can you do that your opponent can't? This might be where the characters show off a certain type of technique or a certain type of ability that they can do that their opponent can't. Now, once you two have both provided your statements, a good debate is a back and forth between that. You say something, then I say something. Then you say something to rebut what I'm saying. Then I say something to rebut what you're saying. This is what makes a good fight scene, or this is what makes a good debate. No one would want to see one character just totally beating on another character the entire time. That's not interesting. That's boring. It should be a nice back and forth between two characters. Now, with a good debater or a good fight scene, what usually happens is typically the winner of the fight is going to be the person who sees the argument, sees that him and his opponent are going back and forth, and tries to understand where the person is coming from and then change tactics. This is what makes a good fight scene, or this is what makes a good debate. Not two people ramming heads against each other until one finally succeeds. It's when oftentimes you see a character changes their tactics, changes their approach, and then adjusts to their opponent to try and find their weakness to eventually win. And then that is when you have the conclusion of the argument or the conclusion of the fight scene. Now that we understand what makes a good fight scene and a boring fight scene, we're going to talk about the three things that every good fight scene has to have. Now, to add a caveat to that statement, a fight scene doesn't necessarily have to have all three of these things to be good, but all of the truly amazing fight scenes has each of these elements. The first element to a good fight scene is the technical narrative. This is the mechanics of the fight. This is the established rules within the world, whatever their magic system is, and how does it work between these two characters. Now, a fight scene with poor technical narrative is probably going to be one of those fight scenes where the two characters are just kind of randomly punching and kicking each other. That's not a good technical narrative. A good technical narrative is when you're seeing characters punch, kick, block, jump, and move around trying to figure out their other opponent. To put simply, good technical narrative is just the back and forth between two characters. The simplest and best example of technical narrative would be Zuko versus Ozai. In this very quick exchange, Ozai launches a huge lightning bolt at Zuko, attacks him furiously, and then Zuko takes that lightning, uses his ability to redirect that lightning right back at Ozai. It is the quickest exchange, barely can be called a fight, but it is a beautiful example of a back and forth. You do something, and then I do something to react to what you did. Now, the next piece is the emotional narrative. This is how attached we are to the characters. How much do we care about this fight and the struggle between them? With a good emotional narrative, it's typically going to be with characters where we have seen their growth or maybe understand their backstory or their struggle. Do we care about what this character is going through? A good example of emotional narrative is when Yusuke was fighting against Toguro. At this point in the story, Yusuke is the strongest he's ever been. He just finished his final test with Genkai. Genkai has just been killed by Toguro, and still Yusuke has trouble tapping into his strongest potential. When Toguro killed Kuwabara, because we understand the struggle and the pain that these characters have gone through to get to this point, when Yusuke was hurt, we were hurt. And this is a great example of emotional narrative. And the last element is stakes. What are the stakes of the fight? What are each of the characters fighting for? How important is those stakes to the character, which by reference should be important to us? Are we fighting for the end of the world? Are we fighting for a love? Are we fighting for very personal reasons, whether it just be pride? How important are the stakes to the character should be how important they are to the viewing audience. A good example of stakes narrative would be Avengers vs. Thanos. When Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor were fighting against Thanos, the stakes were huge. This is the quite literal end of the Infinity Saga. We've seen 10 plus movies of these characters growing and becoming what we love today. Now finally fighting against their ultimate enemy with literally the universe at stake. This was something that we all cared about. This fight to them and us had stakes beyond measure. Another good example of stakes narrative is Aang versus Ozai, where you have Ozai coming on his warships, literally ready to burn an entire kingdom, and Aang, a 13-year-old boy, has the world on his shoulders, fighting against quite possibly the strongest firebender in the entire world. At this point, we have 3 seasons, we have characters that we love and truly care about. The stakes in this moment were just as big. Now, a truly godly fight scene will have all 3 of these aspects within it: technical, emotional, and stakes. Now, a fight scene can still be great if it only has 2 of these aspects, and still be good if it only has 1 of these aspects. But generally, the truly amazing fight scenes have all 3. For example, Shikamaru versus Temari. This fight scene only has 1 of those elements. It is a perfect example of a technical narrative. You have Shikamaru and Temari both fighting against each other, both using certain tactics and skills and traits that they have to adjust to the other person's fight. Now, it is not very emotional because at this point in the story, we don't really know too much about the characters, and there's not very much high stakes because this is just a tournament. Shikamaru and Temari's fight was a beautiful example of a true chess game. It was two characters adjusting and coming up with different tactics to go to the strength and weaknesses of their opponent. However, this is the perfect example of a technical narrative, not emotional or stakes. Our next example is a fight scene that has two of these elements, but not three. This would be the fight between All Might and Nomu. This fight is a beautiful example of an emotional narrative and also a stakes narrative. This fight scene is not very technical, as it is two characters just punching each other. But at this point in the show, it is very emotional because we know the pain and struggle that All Might is going through. Number one being that we know he can't hold this form for very long, so it's emotional because we care about All Might and also care about Deku, who cares about All Might, and the stakes are very high because all of the students of Class 1A could potentially die if All Might fails. This has two of the three elements of a great fight scene. Not technical, but very emotional with high stakes. Now finally, this fight scene encompasses all three elements, and that is Tanjiro and Tenjin versus Gyukimaru. This fight scene was beautifully technical. This fight scene spans between 3 episodes of characters from both sides trying to analyze the other character's strengths and weaknesses, their powers and abilities, and trying to find different and unique ways to get one up on the other one. At no point is one character completely dominating the other side. It's constantly a back and forth. You have Tenjin trying to figure out Gyukimaru's abilities and his poison. You have Tanjiro trying to figure out which fighting style works best against Gyukimaru's abilities. Then you have Gyukimaru analyzing Tenjin and Tanjiro's abilities, analyzing Tenjin's bombs and trying to figure out how they work. You have the emotional aspect of it where Tanjiro's severely injured. Nezuko is also injured from her fight. You have Inosuke and Zenitsu both down for the count, not knowing where they are. You have Tenjin losing an arm. Everyone's incapacitated at this point, and at the climax of the fight, Tenjin literally with one hand fighting against Gyukimaru with all his might for Tanjiro to be able to come in and decapitate Gyukimaru. With multiple people dead, multiple people injured or incapacitated, the entire entertainment district engorged by flames, the emotions and stakes of this fight couldn't be higher. A truly good fight scene is more than just two characters exchanging blows. It's a story in and of itself with a beginning, middle, and end. It's a battle of morality and ideals. Something that's not only beautiful and breathtaking to watch, but it encapsulates the overarching narrative of our story. It even reveals more about our characters than they potentially even know about themselves. This is where they fight and struggle for their core beliefs, and truly what makes an amazing fight scene. But other than that, I have nothing left for this video, so peace!